The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Geneva, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast without the breaks and commercials. Now, here's host Dom Geneva.
Well, welcome to another edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Geneva, your host, every Saturday right here. And like I'd like to remind you, all the past shows are on NoNonsenseRoundtable.com. And today I have somebody who was a guest just a short while ago with me, but he's here to, kind of be my, what would you call it? My safety net.
Wingman.
There we go. That's a good way to say it. Good wingman. On an interview we're doing with a very extraordinary individual, and his name is Christian Garzon, and you might remember him from his stint with Channel 8 News, and he's working for the Veterans Outreach Center now, and he suggested that this gentleman would make a good guest for us, and he certainly is a great guest. And let me have you introduce the gentleman.
Sure. Dom, thanks for having me back again. I really appreciate this opportunity. Mr. Jack Foy, Gentleman Jack Foy, World War II veteran. I interviewed him during my days at Channel 8. He reached out to local media because he gave a speech during D-Day. I think it was last year or the year prior, and no local media really covered it. So he reached out, and I said, wow, this guy's giving this incredible speech in Normandy. This is incredible sound. We had a phone conversation. I sat down with him at his home in Greece. And, you know, with local news, you have to cut so much out. There's so much material here. There's so much of a wonderful story to tell. And just God bless this man. And thank you, Jack, for your service. Here, just buckle up. This is a wonderful story. Mr. Foy, I want to just say thank you for joining us on the No Nonsense Roundtable. Good morning, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Tell us about where you grew up, sir. It was the Charlotte area, correct?
Yes, I grew up right down by the lake in Charlotte. I was about the middle child of a large family. There were 10 kids in our family.
Ooh. Wow.
But that was, you say, woo, but that wasn't very unusual at that time. See, this was back in 1925. Mm-hmm. The Depression was just getting ready to start. And large families were very, very common. Very common. Perhaps not 10, but 7 and 8 were not unusual at all.
Yeah, there were 11 in my dad's family. Yeah, I he was born in 1910. So I can well think about that time. Sure.
Yeah, a lot of my dad had 6 brothers and sisters.
Yeah,
he was born in 1950. But when you decided to join to serve during World War II, you said you were about 18 years old or whatever. It was November of 44?
No, I was younger than that. I was 17.
17, there we go.
In fact, I had to get a special permission to join. They had what they call the ASTP, Army Specialized Training Program, which was starting to send, well, quite frankly, you had to have a few smarts. Pretty well up on the education class. But they're going to send us to college, supposed to go for 2 years, complete the 4-year college course in 2 years and get a commission in the Army Engineers. I was selected to go to Cornell University, and in 4 months there, that was my first time away from home. Now it's not unusual to have little kids say, well, I'm going to New York next week, or I'm going to Chicago, going down south, going almost any place. But back then, if you took a trip from here to Niagara Falls, boy, that was a big trip and something you talked about all year.
For sure. And then, with the college stint, you served over in Europe when you eventually joined the military. So you talk about taking a big trip at 17, 18 years old over to Europe. You served, I didn't mean to spoil it all, but you served in Patton's army, correct?
Yes, yeah. I was a frontline machine gunner in General George Patton's army.
Well, the world was...
My job was killing Germans. I did a lot of it.
So did you join after December 7th, or were you in the Army before that? Or
no,
what?
I joined when in high school. The recruiters for the Army came around to the high schools at that time. This was in 43.
Okay.
When I graduated from high school, and I took the test maybe 3 or 4 months before I graduated, and they sent me to Cornell University.
Now, tell me about. I mean, it's 1943. I mean, it's in the thick of it. I mean, already, and you know what you're getting into.
Yes.
So what were your feelings when you first got inducted? I mean,
at that time it was let me at 'em. Come on, join the Army. Give me a gun and let me go. I'm gonna get those sons of what, you know. And everybody was fighting to get into the service. Not like today, where they sometimes have a rather difficult time signing guys up for the service. But back then, everybody wanted to go.
Well, and I think one of the things is that back then you either had to sign up or more than likely you're going to get drafted anyway, right?
Oh yeah.
Goodness me! And you fought in the Battle of the Bulge, correct?
Yes, yeah. I was an infantry machine gunner right in the front line, just outside of Bastogne, Belgium, during the battle, most of the Battle of the Bulge. And I was lucky. We went in, 200 of us in the infantry company, or a little less, because we already been fighting down the Saar Valley, and we lost a few people down there. The regular infantry company is about 200 men. But anyway, and during the Bulge, we went in with a full company. We came out about 6 weeks later. There's about 14 of us left from the original company.
Oh, my God.
Of that number, about 85 were killed, and most of the rest wounded. I was lucky. I got hit 3 times, but just minor flesh wounds. He just patched me up. I go back to the aid station. Doctor patched me up and said, "Can you still walk?" "Yeah, I can still walk." He said, "Well, get your tail back up there."
Well, and you were fighting pretty much the SS, right? I mean, this was the elite troops.
Yeah, it was the cream of the German army. We found out later when we started taking prisoners and that. These were mostly SS troopers in our area.
And when you were talking about the actual being in the thick of the fighting, you did say, you did shoot a lot of Germans. And last time we talked, you mentioned that perhaps, would you do anything differently if you could go back in time?
I don't think so. We had what we had to do with the circumstances at the time. It's easy to say that, well, you shouldn't have shot that man. I did. That's what we were there for.
Well, the thing about World War II, and you can talk about all the conflicts since then, but this was an existential threat to the United States and our way of life. Mm-hmm. And that's why, in my opinion, that you are the part of what we call the greatest generation.
Yeah.
I mean, what would this world be like if Germany won? Or Hitler had the atomic bomb, or whatever, and that is what. So whatever you're doing, you say, well, the end justifies the mean. You could do what you had to do, and it has to be psychologically hard on you to take somebody else's life, but it's necessary to be done, right? I mean, that's it. I mean,
I'll never forget the first man I ever shot, but there were dozens after that. So.
Yeah, I think you described you kind of, if I remember correctly, you kind of made eye contact, you looked at each other.
Yeah.
You pulled the trigger and cut him down because you had to do what you had to do.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that fascinates me, never having been in the military, they say it's, it's that Band of Brothers thing. It's the guys, I see you shaking your head like Like I hit on, yeah, it's the guys you're with. It's your country, but it's also the guys that you're with that you're loyal to and you're taking care of. You know, sort of no man left behind, right? So you must have lost good friends, and that with that type of attrition, you must have really lost some good friends.
It was tough. I'll tell you that it was tough, and you see your best friend shot alongside of you. You just, the first couple would tear your heart out, and then you hear later that, well, George got it yesterday. George was a good friend.
Yeah. So what were the battles you were in before the Bulge? Because obviously, I mean, that's in the dead of winter. The other thing about that is that you really weren't expecting that, right? I mean,
we were about a month or so. Our division was down in the Saar Valley. The French, right on the French-German border. We're just kind of feeling our way into the Siegfried Line at that time, but that's when the Germans hit up north in Belgium.
A lot of people might not know what the Siegfried Line is, so let's explain to some of our.
The Siegfried Line was a line of forts designed by the Germans all along the French border, all the way up north across Belgium into Holland. And it was a very effective. Well, it was primarily a bunch of small forts, pillboxes they were called at that time, and they were spaced, maybe 50 yards apart, all for the whole distance from all the way the French border all the way on up into Holland.
And that's one of the things is that they would catch you in the crossfire, and they're fixed positions, so it's not like you could bomb them out of position or something like that. That had to be a tough fight right there.
Yeah, we were lucky, and that by the time we were used to fighting against these pillboxes, and we just worked out how we could take one of them, one of the pillboxes. Then they left the pillboxes on either side of it in danger because they would protect each other.
Right.
But you fight like the devil to take one, and then you could work down the line.
Well, it's amazing what you were up against in those battles. I mean, if you were, you had the Atlantic Wall. If you were in the Navy, if you were trying to invade France or whatever, you had that wall. You had the Siegfried Line. The German technology was kind of against you. I mean, obviously, and whatever you had to bring over from here, so it had to be portable. I mean,
yes.
So tell me about the weapons back then. I mean, how many? What was your typical rifle like? It's not like now you have, everybody's got.
The rifles at the time were the M1 rifle, which was really a darn good rifle. It would hold, I think it was 10 cartridges in a little clip. You could snap into the rifle, whereas the Germans still had a single shot rifle.
Oh, really? Really, I didn't know that.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, and they talk about. I mean, Chris, what do they talk about these days? When you were in the military, how many rounds did your weapon?
9mm. We used it during boot camp. Then we'd be out to sea, and we would. What they did was they put a little target out at sea with Bin Laden's face on it. We would fight. I don't know if we do that these days, but that was fond memories of that kind of stuff. Yeah, but I can't imagine. Going in against superior technology like that, what the Germans had. And I can sense when we've talked, Jack, in your voice, you're thinking over things a little bit. I can't imagine over the decades coping with this sort of, I guess we'll call it trauma, of going through the Battle of the Bulge and everything else. What was your secret to get through that kind of stuff as you've gotten older? How did you get through it?
Oh, gosh, kind of hard to describe, really. We just did what we had to do at the time. We had learned me to have a great faith in God, though. I'll tell you, I did an awful lot of praying.
There's no atheists in foxholes, they say, right? Well, but here's the thing. I think I'm going to interject this just as a psychological observation. I see in men that served in World War II that there was no question of why you're there and why you have to do what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when you get to there's questions about Vietnam. There's questions about the Iraq War. There's did we do the right thing with it? But when you're talking about World War II, there's no question at all that you had to do what you did. And I think now. Well, I mean, is that the way you think about these things? Like you had to do it?
Oh,
and it gives you more of a feeling of peace because you had to do it, right?
Yeah. We just had to. It wasn't a matter of, well, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to go over here. You did what you were told to do. Well, mostly in the frontline infantry, we were young kids, 18, 19 years old.
Yeah. Well, they at 18 and 19 years old, again, a psychological thing. You think you're going to live forever anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
you get to our age and you start going, oh my God, I'm not planning for 50 years from now. So now you're speaking of which, you are 98 going on 99 going on.
Yeah, I'll be 99 in a few months.
Oh, God bless you.
We'll be right back to talk more after this. This section of the No Nonsense Roundtable is brought to you by, the No Nonsense Roundtable. You see, at the No Nonsense Roundtable, we do marketing for different organizations, and let me give you an example. Here's an ad that we did for the Rotary Sunshine Camp just recently, and it was voiced by Don Alhart.
It's a magical place for kids of all abilities.
At no charge, the Rochester Rotary Sunshine Camp has been serving children of all abilities for the last 100 years. Help us grow into the next 100 years. Go to sunshinecamp.org to learn more about how you can help.
Where kids have no barriers to fun.
The Rochester Rotary Sunshine Camp.
We do all sorts of things, mainly for smaller companies, so if you'd like to investigate the possibility of us doing some work for you, contact me at nononsenseroundtable.com.
So let's get off the military thing for just a little bit of a second. What is your secret to, I mean, you're healthy. You're healthy, but also, you see people that are, it's like like their odometers were rolled back or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Somebody he's 80, but he's really like 103, and you get some people that are that are kind of young at heart and whatever. You seem to be you seem to be very with it. God bless you.
I was just lucky enough to be healthy all my life. I never had any major diseases. Nothing more than the usual whooping cough and things like that, but no real serious diseases or problems. Never had a broken bone. Had three bullet holes in me. That was all. And they were just through my arm and through my legs. So
Oh my Lord!
it really wasn't. Slowed me down a little bit, but didn't hurt too much.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, because there must be some secret with your diet or something. I mean, is it bacon and eggs in the morning, or is it is?
Yeah, bacon and eggs or a bowl of cereal, one or the other.
Yeah. And is there any kind of it's moderate with alcohol, I would imagine, things like that.
No, I drink a little bit, but I buy a 6-pack of beer at Wegmans, and it's liable to be sitting in my refrigerator for a month.
Yeah. We're trying to figure out what the secret is, but I guess
so we can duplicate it for ourselves.
We can live to be 98 or 99. Yeah, it's amazing. And you told me you're hoping to live to 105. Why?
Yeah. I have 6 grandchildren, 6 or 8 grandchildren who are just little ones under 2 years old. And I want to live long enough to see them grow to maybe 10 years old. The oldest one now is about 3 or 4, I think. I want to see them reach maybe 10 years old.
Yeah, that's a beautiful goal.
So if you want to live to 105, so if you get to 106, you're going to be disappointed? Is that
I got a little boy. Well, most of the grandchildren are girls. I got two boys. You got one little boy that he just melts. He's he's about 8 months old now, I guess. Yeah. He just melts me when I pick him up and that, you know.
Chris, I talk all the time about, I'm disappointed sometimes that this isn't on video, because the light in Jack's eyes when he's talking about his grandkids. Our first grandkid just turned 1, and we know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Exactly what you're talking about. You wish you're going to be here for their wedding, but you're pretty sure you're pretty sure you're not going to be here for their wedding. Now what did you do professionally?
Well, after I had my first year of college in at Cornell before I went in the Army. Well, I was in the Army when I was there, but you took the regular first year courses, and in 3-4 months we covered the first year, but then they needed infantry over in Europe. It was North Africa at that time, and they were given heavy losses, so they pulled us all right out. It was rough. You thought you were going to have a nice job in the Army. There they shoved us all in the infantry. Mm-hmm. We had the smartest infantry guys you ever saw in your life.
What do you say?
They're all, because you had to be of high IQ to get into the ASTP, the specialized training. Yeah. You had to have I forget what it was the dividing point, something like 110 or something like that. I forget.
So how did you? Here, I'm going to change the subject here a little bit to something that's really kind of a silly question, but I love the question. So, your wife, how long were you married for, or are you married still? Or
I was married for about 25 years, and I lost her.
That's sad.
And about 20 years ago, I lost her.
So how'd you meet?
We went to grammar school together.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, God.
And it was just another girl that I knew, nothing in particular, really. But then we got together when I came home from the Army. And
that's great. That's great. And when you came home, I think you were a plumber, right? Or you had a plumbing business?
Yes. I didn't know what to do when I got out of the Army back in 46, 45, 46. I get out of the Army, and I was thinking about going back to Cornell and getting a degree in engineering or something. Mm-hmm. But then I had to wait for 4 or 5 months before the school thing started, and I went to work with my older brother and my father, who ran a small plumbing repair business in Charlotte. And after a while, I worked with them for a while, and I liked it. Mm. I found out that I was better off working with my hands than working with my mind. I could have to do something. I could step back there. I've done something. Right. I accomplished something. Yeah. And I liked it. And so I decided to stay in the plumbing business, and I got my own master plumber's license after a few years.
And then the Naval Reserve as well, right? You were in the Naval Reserve?
Yeah, that's another story.
Yeah, that's a whole other, so Army and Navy.
Yeah. Why, how does that work?
The evils of drink. I was up in the Four Corners area. This was about 1950.
The
evils of drink, yeah.
And
our next
there was something in the newspaper and the bar we were talking, and had the Navy Reserve was sending a cruise down to Cuba. Hey, let's go to Cuba. We thought that was an excellent
idea. Sounded like a good idea at the time.
It was an excellent idea. Excellent idea at the time. And I did. I got a nice cruise to Cuba. But then after a year, I was already at that time you could just resign from the reserve. And I was going up to resign. The guy talked me into transferring over to the Seabees, the Navy construction. Mm-hmm. I only had another year to go. So, okay, I'll take that. Then the Korean War broke out. Mm-hmm. I got called back and served in the Seabee, the construction.
And were you in Korea?
No, I never got to Korea. I got to Japan. I was in Hawaii for a while. Went out the Aleutian Islands up. We set off an atom bomb. We built a lot of different types of houses and that to see what effect the atom bomb would have on various types of construction. It was our job there.
We'll be right back after this. This is Dom Geneva for my friends at Valley Fuel. It was decades ago that Phil Saunders called me up and said he was starting a new company, Valley Fuel. And man, I got to tell you, this has been a great experience. If you're looking for affordable propane or home heating oil, contact Valley Fuel. If you want reliable delivery, contact Valley Fuel. If you want to do business with a local company, contact Valley Fuel. If you want to find out how to contact Valley Fuel, go to valleyfuels.com or your No Nonsense Roundtable.
I want to get back to your days as an infantryman in the battle for the Bulge.
Yeah.
So it's got to be, like they say about a lot of things, it's got to be a lot of boredom that is broken up by terror. I mean, is that pretty much do you have, is a lot of mundane days and days and days, and then all of a sudden one day all hell is breaking loose, or is all hell breaking loose the whole time?
Well, there were hardly any days that were quiet. It was terror 90% of the time. And I think there was hardly more than 1 or 2 days during the whole month and a half or so that the Bulge lasted. I don't think there was more than 1 or 2 days that I didn't fire my gun.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is that, I mean, you're fighting the Germans, but you're fighting the environment too. I mean, how they said it got awfully cold, and the weather was just absolutely horrible, right?
It was down to 10 below zero.
How do you survive in that? I mean, seriously.
Our big problem with that was that a guy get a fairly minor wound, perhaps a shot in the leg or something like that, where he couldn't move very well, and he'd freeze to death before help could get to him. We lost an awful lot of men that way. There were comparatively minor wounds, but they froze to death.
Well, the other thing too, the equipment's got to be freezing up too, right?
Oh yeah.
It's the terror and the combat isn't enough. It's the cold as well.
Yeah.
And there was one thing you told me. I had to cut it out of the story last time. I think you said you went down to rest one night in an abbey or a cathedral or a monastery, and then what happened when you woke up there?
Well, we came across this old a monastery in the middle of the woods there, just outside of Bastogne, and our commander thought, well, this would be a good chance. Things were quieting down a little bit. So we decided, well, we're going to take half the guys and put them inside the monastery out of the freezing cold a little bit, although it was pretty cold inside too. But so half of us went in. Well, I stayed out on the gun in the foxhole right just outside the monastery, and then my assistant gunner went in. So about, maybe 2, 3 hours, 4 hours later, I got up and he came out and I went into the monastery. So I'm going down the hall trying to find a place it was pitch black. Couldn't see, I was kind of feeling my way going down the hall. I felt a doorway. I went into the door, into the place, and just feeling around. I felt a big box, put my hand in the box. The box was filled with straw. I said, oh, this is for me. I climbed in and went right to sleep. Woke up a couple hours later. Where the hell am I? It was getting light then. I sat up and I looked to my right. There was another box there, just like the one I was in, only this one had a dead German in it. And I looked to my left, and here's another box. This was a dead monk was in that. In terms of that, I spent the night in the mortuary.
I love that bit.
Yeah, good thing. Yeah, good thing they didn't take it to the next step.
Yeah.
So at one point, now it was General McAuliffe, wasn't it? Was that his name? the Battle of the Bulge?
There wasn't. He was in charge of the 101st Airborne.
But he's when the German general said asked him for a unconditional surrender. He said there's a famous story that he sent him a note and just said nuts.
Yeah.
Although I have heard that I guess it might be a legend has it that it wasn't one word. It was actually two words, and it wasn't nuts.
What was it? NUTS? What was it?
No, nuts, because nuts meant you're full of it. Back then, that's what that meant. Yeah, you're full of it. You're full of crap. Whatever. And there's a rumor going around that he actually sent him a note that said "F you."
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Rather than something as gentle as nuts.
This is what they mean about sanitizing history.
Yeah, sanitizing.
And whitewashing it. This is what they mean. Yeah.
Because it looked like it was a hopeless situation. But
they were completely surrounded.
But the story goes that the weather cleared and you could get air support, and that was the difference. Is that pretty much true, or is that Hollywood?
Our outfit got in there, of all things, Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
We got because we had a long ways to come. We were down the Saar Valley, and it took 2 or 3 days for us to get up to Belgium.
Yeah, well, the word is the Battle of the Bulge. Hitler planned this, but they had to have perfect weather. If they didn't have perfect weather, it wasn't gonna work.
Yeah, they were lucky. It was ideal from the German point of view.
Yeah, and he was looking for something like Dunkirk again. He's gonna slice everybody off, and they're gonna be stuck there. And that's there are a lot of stories World War II about the crazy.
And he damn near did it.
Yeah. Yeah, a few more days of cloudy weather in
we had no air support until about the 2nd or 3rd of January, I think.
Well, he went through the Ardennes first, back, and he thought he could do it again. I guess that was the thing. Yeah, the Ardennes, for anybody who is not familiar with it, is a section of forest. That's between Germany and France, and the terrain is so awful that it was generally accepted that you couldn't do the transportation through the logistics through it and get it done. And that's what he got done. Hitler did, and that's consequently how he conquered France.
Yeah, see, trying to move our equipment. Heavy equipment.
Oh yeah,
and these little country roads going through there was terrible.
Yep. That's
artillery and that trying to move it around. Next to impossible.
Well, a military thing that you had to come in contact with too is logistics. That's what we're going through in Ukraine right now. you could be the best rifleman in the world, but you need your bullets. So. Tell me about that. Tell me about that. You were cut off, so you had to have been concerned about that. The whole company, right?
We were completely surrounded for a matter of about a week, I guess. And it was tough. We were hard getting ammunition and food in. They're trying to, they're even dropping some food to us from the small planes, the observation planes that the artillery used. They're like a Piper Cub.
Piper Cubs, yeah. That's small observation planes, sure.
Yeah, and they drop stuff to us.
Now, when you're what is your shelter like when you're there? It's just a foxhole.
On your own. You had you had an army blanket on your belt. And that was it. That was the extent of your shelter.
Well, and the other thing is the fight itself was there's stories of the Germans assassinating the prisoners of war, the American prisoners of war. Is that something you knew about, heard of? Or?
There was a lot of that. One prime example. The woods in the Ardennes were, even like here, like the Adirondacks here, where there's all woods, and then there's a bare spot in the middle of a fire lane. It's made to stop the fire.
Yep.
And Our company, which was cut way down then, we only had about 40 guys left, I think. And there's a German company of about the same size on the other side of this. I mean, we're fighting back and forth, and there was half a dozen of our guys and half a dozen Germans laying in the field in between us that were shot. And the Germans hoisted a white flag, not to surrender, but to ask for a truce to get the wounded.
Mm-hmm.
And our company commander agreed to it. And so the German medics went out, and our medics went out and started to take care of the wounded guys. Well, the Germans got through first and got back into and as soon as they got back into their lines, they opened fire on our medics. And it was like somebody fired off a gun for the start of a race. We came up out of our foxholes. We had those foxholes on the other side of the thing, and went across that thing with fixed bayonets, went into the German lines. And they were, comrade, they wanted to surrender. Comrade, hell, USOB.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we killed every one of them.
Yeah. Well,
they killed our medics. There was no forgiveness for that.
It's awful.
We'll be right back to talk more after this. Hey gang, this is Dom. Like I like to say, it's either a hop, skip, and a jump or a short scoot down 390 to Jim Shelley's Fanatics Pub and Stage in Lima. Forget that GPS. Coming from Rochester, go down 390 to exit 10. Left at the light and 2 more lights and you're there. March 30th, Jim has a Bob Dylan tribute show. You gotta catch that. Go to fanaticspub.com to get your tickets.
When you talk about World War II, you talk about the Nazis and the whole philosophy. I mean, these guys that were, SS. I mean, these were kids that originally were Hitler Youth. So they are. I mean, I see you shaking your head. Yeah. So they are absolutely brainwashed to being the superior race and that you're inferior. And I mean, that seems to me to compel a whole different level of brutality when they don't consider you human, which is what they did to the Jews. They don't think they're...
Oh, gosh, it was horrible. Yeah, because we got into, later in the war, we got into the concentration camps. Like the biggest one, we took several of them, but the biggest one was Buchenwald. It was a huge...
Were you there?
I was in we took Buchenwald.
Oh, my Lord.
It was horrible.
Oh, my Lord. Tell me about that.
Well, we were coming down the road, and we came across... we captured maybe 30 or 40 Germans were the guards at Buchenwald, and they told us they're coming from Buchenwald. And we took them prisoner, and we went down a couple miles farther down the road, and the stink was terrible. So we got into Buchenwald, and finally we got close, and we had a tank with us. We drove the tank through the main gate of Buchenwald, and we went in. It was the most horrible thing I'd ever seen in my life. Dead bodies laying all over the place.
How awful to see that.
And it was just awful. You couldn't...
Now, let me ask you, we know so much about the Holocaust and concentration camps because obviously we have, history, we look back on it. You were living it in the moment. Did American soldiers know what was going on at all? Were there rumors about concentration camps?
Oh, yeah. We'd heard stories about them, but nothing. That was the first big one to be captured. We've captured a couple of small ones a week or so before. They were claimed as sub-camps of Buchenwald.
Goodness me.
But they weren't quite as bad.
Well, and they say that the townspeople denied ever knowing about it, and I guess the story is somewhere that the generals made the townspeople come and...
Right, we did. We sent the people. We sent the we went into the Weimar was the city. It was just down the street, maybe 2 miles away from the camp. And they claimed they knew nothing about the camp. But they had to, because starting with the smell of the place. Yeah. And that's where all the soldiers, the guards there, that's where they went into town at night, away from the camp. So they knew what was going on there, but they claimed they didn't. But we made them come back to the camp and to bury the bodies all over there's dead bodies all over the place. We made them dig made a small cemetery there and buried them all.
So let's touch on the happy moment. We might go back to some of this stuff, but at some point in time, there's VE Day. At some point in time, the fighting has to wind down. It's pretty much done, right? Is that so? Tell me about those days.
We were up at that time when things started to slow down. We made a city name of Plauen, which was about maybe 40 miles away from the Czechoslovakian border on the far side of Germany. And we were in a little smaller town from there, Olsnitz. How I remember that name, I don't know, but I do. And the people there were, of all things, it was the first time we had to take a bath in one hell of a long time. And they had, as in Europe is still this way, they have these public baths in the town. They had a huge one in the middle of town. Uh-huh. And of course we had to have our troops out outside the town, but then we go in to take a bath, and here these huge German women in this bath, running in the bath.
Beer drinkers, they
were all about 200 pounds. There was a dozen of them. Boy, and here's all these naked American soldiers running around in there, and they're scrubbing our backs and everything. And we had quite a time there.
Wow. What'd that first bath feel like?
It felt good.
But there's nothing else like it in this world
good.
You can think of. Yeah.
Because, at that time, up till then, to take a bath meant washing your face.
Yeah.
That's about as far as you could go.
But you have those large German honeys there, rubbing you down.
Right. It worked out fine.
So let me ask you another, maybe a little bit off the wall question. So the military back in the 40s and the military that you have been part of, which has been the volunteer.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Back in the day, like I said before, is that. You pretty much knew you were going to be drafted, or you had a pretty good chance of being drafted.
Oh, yeah.
That's the way the country was. Now it's a volunteer force. Give me a comment about the military in the past and the military now, the similarities and the differences and the different challenges.
Well, there we had a common enemy to start with, the Germans and the Japanese, and we hated them. And we'd do anything to get into the service. Guys were fighting to get to be first in line at the draft board. And of course, there were a few that fought it that didn't want to go, but they were the exception rather than the rule. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, we were different, I think. The average kid that wanted to join up. Just a great majority of the kids today don't have any interest at all in joining the Army or the Navy. And it's got to a point now where it's actually causing quite a problem in the service. Like the Army is down some, 80,000 or something like that recruits that they're supposed to get 100,000 in this year, mm-hmm. and they're only able to get 40,000 or something.
Yeah, the numbers are dwindling, and what annoys me is they're letting some of the standards slip. From what I understand, oh, your belly's too big? Okay, that's fine. And they're pushing the boundaries a bit to get people on board. And you're right, your generation was different. You're the greatest generation. Yeah. What would you say is missing from the generation that is around now, the fighting age generation? What's missing?
I think loyalty to our country. I mean, you ask half the kids out there, they wouldn't go in the Army. What if you went to war? Would you go? Nah, hell, they'd have to make me go. I might go, but they'd have to force me.
Well, a draft would not work now. I mean,
no, I can't imagine a draft working. I think ever since Vietnam, the I don't want to say the appetite, but the will to, I don't know, sign up and go has diminished a bit. 9/11 was a great sort of resurgence of that spirit, and that's one of the reasons I signed up after 9/11 is because I had to do something. And back in Jack's day, the enemy was very black and white. Now I think there's all these shades of gray in between that it's a little bit tougher. It's not really, besides Russia, Ukraine, things like that, but with Afghanistan, Iraq, we're fighting these insurgents who are over that hill, and you don't know who the bad guy is. It's a little bit different, I think. But it's just sad that these days, as Jack was saying, people seem to look at this country all throughout history. Every tribe, every city-state, every empire, every kingdom, every republic has its scars, its bad stories. So does America. We have our warts, but I think people are ripping the spirit out of the spirit out of America and looking at the past and really deconstructing it as if we're unique with these certain things when it comes to, expansion westward and slavery, things like that. It's awful, but it's not unique to America. That's just the human story across the world.
I think if I were to paraphrase, and you can agree or disagree with the way I'm going to frame this, is that we seem to be lacking a respect for ourselves.
You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. This is Dom Geneva for my friends at the McClurg dealerships in Perry. Family owned for generations, John McClurg has 2 dealerships, Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram and McClurg Chevy Buick. I've known John for years, and you know what you get when you get a John McClurg deal? You get John, a stand-up, no-nonsense guy who's there for his customers when they need him. Go check out the McClurg dealerships. You're closer than you think to the deal you deserve.
Well, I think some of it, you talk about the Iraq War and weapons of mass destruction, and it was predicated upon that. Then you found out that wasn't true.
Yeah.
And you might have lost your buddies in doing that. So if you lost your buddies in a cause that was an existential threat to the United States, like World War II, which was an existential threat, rather than a perceived threat, which really wasn't a threat. I mean, I think that you have a little more confidence, and it comes down to the leadership of the country, all told, because they're making the decisions. It's not the generals, it's not the rank and file. Somebody at the top is deciding that this is important to our national security, and is it or is it not? That's the question.
I think the Vietnam War was the start of all our, let's say, ill connections. We had no reason to be in Vietnam. No reason at all.
And
yet they did it.
It was fought as a zero-sum game. It was fought that nobody would consider. Well, it was actually fought on a mathematical. I don't want to call it a falsehood, but a mathematical theory that said if you have a battle and you're going to lose, 5,000, and the other guy is going to lose 10,000, you're going to win, and the other side doesn't care. The other side. I mean, they're in the jungle. They're putting punji sticks. They're doing all these tactics that you can't have any fight against. So. But anyway, AIDs and stuff that you have now that you didn't have quite as much back then, right? You didn't know who your enemy was.
Oh, it was tough. Yeah.
Your guys pretty much wore uniforms. The Germans pretty much. So you knew that guy, right? Now when you were overseas, you're in the Middle East. You don't know who you're.
I know, and not that I was on the ground, but I was on an aircraft carrier, in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. But the guys on the ground, that was one of the biggest problems. You go door to door, village to village, trying to figure out who the bad guy is. It's not like a nice tidy uniform that they can find and say there he is or there she is. It's some guy who might be carrying something under a cloak, and you have no idea. It's very, very difficult.
That's a problem you have in Gaza now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's Hamas? Is he Hamas or is he not Hamas? I don't know.
That's such a shame. Yeah, it's very, very hard. Very, very hard these days. Yeah. And you're right, though. It's Vietnam, I think, as I was saying earlier, and as Jack was saying, we kind of lost our stomach for a lot. I think.
Well, we didn't see it as an existential threat. Yeah. Whether we lost in Vietnam or whatever, it was based on a philosophy. The philosophy was that you were going to have this domino effect.
Yeah, communism.
Yeah. Communism is going to go to Thailand, to India, to whatever, and that we had to be stopped sooner or later, and that. Unfortunately, and then the other thing about Vietnam, quite frankly, is the draft. I mean, you don't have a volunteer force who says, "Yeah, I believe in this. I want to sign up for it." You're taking young men out of their families and sending them off to war, and they're dying, and we don't really know what the whole outcome of this is going to be, and nobody wants to make a decision. You got to make a tough decision.
50,000 plus.
I mean, really. I mean, think about that.
Awful. Yeah.
Think about that.
And almost all of them were draftees. There's a few regular Army, but I would say probably about 80% of those were draftees.
Yep.
And we salute their service. Nevertheless, it's just.
God bless you guys.
God bless them.
I mean, God bless you guys. I mean, somebody's got to do it, And the thing is that, especially Jack, in your generation, we wouldn't be here. I mean, we wouldn't be here. I mean, you saved the country. You saved our way of life. You saved generations upon generations of people that are alive today because you did what you did, and I don't think we can honor you enough. I really don't think we can honor you enough.
Well, and speaking of being honored, President Donald Trump, you've met him a few times. Yeah.
I sat down and had lunch with him one day, right in the White House.
Wonderful.
Yeah, strangely enough, I was on my way. I got a call to give a talk to a group in Washington, D.C. They were all Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something like 40 to 50,000 of them in a big, huge auditorium there in the south side of Washington, D.C. And I called the White House. When I got called the other place, I had a connection there in the White House. Said, "Can I get a tour of the White House? We're coming down." That's whatever the date was, I forget now. And they said, "Well, that's on a Saturday, and we don't have tours of the White House on Saturday, but we'll have something for you. You just come over here." We got to the airport, and we're leaving the airport to get a taxi. And you know the way it is, people holding signs up in the airport.
Yeah.
So a guy had a sign up, Jack Foy. I went over, the guy was a civilian guy, but he said, "The president has sent me to pick you up."
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
At the airport. Took me he took us to, well, not to the White House, but across the street from the White House. It was right at noontime. So we went into a little restaurant there and had a little sandwich, a little lunch, and just walked over to the White House. And Trump was just getting ready. He was going someplace. A helicopter was just coming in and landing at the airport there, and he stopped, said, "Say hello to us," and that was about as much of a contact as we were able to have at that time.
That had to be so cool.
But we had our own private tour. We were the only ones in the White House. We had 2 Secret Service men with us who were taking us through, showing us everything.
Yeah. How amazing.
It really was.
Well, we're about ready to go, but I'm just going to turn it over to you. We're talking to probably 12,000 people now, and they are 99.9% are all over the age of 30. So we're not talking to like high school kids or whatever. What would you like to say to them?
Oh gosh. It's hard to say because I talk to an awful lot of high school kids.
Well, tell me what you say to the high school kids. I mean, the concept of what you say.
Yeah. Develop a sense of loyalty to your country. Don't believe everything you see on television and that, but reason it out. That some of these guys are telling highfalutin stories, and some are very true. You got to learn through experience and education what you accept as the truth or reasonably close to the truth. And that is quite a thing today, you see. And the news, even locally, you have one channel will have the truth as you'll figure, well, it's 90% of the truth. But another station, or the local station, you know darn well that most of the stuff they're presenting on national news. Now, the local news is one thing.
Yeah.
That's usually
that's the
quite,
best.
That's
Yeah.
usually quite.
Wink, wink. That's the best.
That's usually quite accurate, and either on all the stations. But you see the same story on one station, you know, that you know isn't telling the truth, and they stretch the story, and another one is it's the opposite. Is telling the same story, and it's a completely different version of the story.
It's so sad. Yeah, national, local news. Whole other discussion, but yeah.
Well, Jack, I have to tell you, one of my philosophies of life is that if you could leave the place a little better than the way you found it, you know, and whether you believe in God or don't believe in God or whatever, if we could leave the place a little better than you found it, your life is well lived. And there's no doubt that you're leaving the place a little bit better than the way you found it, because you contributed back when we needed you, and we should know about you and other men and women who dealt with that all those years ago, and be thankful and grateful that you're born.
Yeah, I'm
you're
very
here.
fortunate in that the experiences I've had, I've talked to probably almost every high school in the Rochester area, and pretty much every high school in Monroe County. I've given talks, and 90% of the time they're quite well accepted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So-
Well, you see, this has to do with the culture of the United States, and having respect for the United States. And we might have had some problems in the past.
Oh yeah.
But there's a difference between fault and responsibility. There's a lot of things that aren't our fault, but our responsibility to fix, and we can't blame somebody from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of something that was common hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, at some point in time, somebody put a leech on your great 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 grandmother, and she died. Okay, they thought that leeches were going to save your grandmother's life, but you know, you can't go back. You know, now and do a malpractice insurance for somebody who thinks that they had little gnomes in your spleen. You know, so.
Yeah, but just real quick, as I was saying, it's very possible to teach history about something, to cope with it, to deal with it without ripping the spirit out of something. And that's what is happening today with a lot, is ripping the spirit out of America. The idea that all men, all of mankind is created equal. And, you know, the founding fathers did what they could at the base level. And, you know, it was a wonderful idea. And we're making it a more perfect union, I think, every day. We're trying our hardest, but just don't rip the spirit out of it. Yeah.
But think about this. You created equal. Now it's up to you to do your destiny the way your destiny should be. So it's not like, well, everybody's equal money, equal thing, equal respect and whatever when you're in your 40s. No, it was up to you. You were created equal.
Yeah.
You were created equal. Your God-given right to be what you have the potential of being, not like in England, where it was royalty, and if you weren't born royalty, then you couldn't go, you were prevented from doing things, but you were created equal. So now it's up to you to have some responsibility for your own actions, consequences of your behavior, and make the most of yourself that you can. So with that, Jack, it's been a privilege and an honor to have you on the show. Thank you from the bottom of my heart of your contribution to the United States and us helping us be what we are, what we got to be. And Christian, thank you ever so much for what you're doing and supporting our veterans. Thank you for your service. And We got to talk more about that aircraft carrier thing. That sounds,
Yeah, I know.
It's fascinating to me. So
it's amazing. Well, thank you for having me on again, Dom. Really appreciate it. I am Jack's honor flight, so to speak, back to Greece. So we're going to get in the car and fly away here.
Okay, well, watch out for deer. I just saw about a half a dozen of drive by their driveway.
Jack can be my eyes. 98 years old. He's very sharp. He can be my eyes.
Okay, everybody. Next week, 10 o'clock, right here is the No Nonsense Roundtable.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.